Maricopa County is home to Phoenix and several other cities in Arizona. Since his election to sheriff in 1992, Joe Arpaio has enjoyed popularity with local voters by proclaiming himself the toughest sheriff in America. He famously attracts attention by using chain gangs and tents for inmates in the scorching desert heat. More recently, he has become a national figure in the immigration debate for initiating large arrests of undocumented workers. There are people and communities who have borne the brunt of these methods, who are overshadowed by the sheriff, and who endure the consequences and casualties from the fears that Arpaio exploits.
We will continue to enforce all the laws, and especially the illegal immigration laws.
No identification, looks like just came from Mexico, and they admit it, so that's enough. I'm going to continue to do everything I've been doing. Nothing changes.
I'm hoping that people that drive by here with their kids will see this chain gang.
I want to warn everybody, especially in Mexico, if you want to come through Maricopa County, we're going to have enough firepower to react.
40,000 have investigated, arrested, or detained, investigated in our jail system. And where's all the big problem? If they have their speech, what they look like, if they just look like they came from another country, we can take care of that situation. So that's all they can do is bring up the race card just because I'm doing my job. Where are all the allegations? Where are all the allegations if I'm doing this wrong?
We're all going to take on the street. We're all going to be there and show Joe Arpaio we're not scared of him. Show the Obama administration we're not going to stop until he stops the ICE access programs and puts Joe Arpaio behind bars. So who's streets? Who's streets? Who's streets? Let's go!
Arrest Arpaio, not the people! Arrest Arpaio, not the people! Arrest Arpaio, not the people!
We're here closing down the jails. We're not letting cops into the jails and hope that no more people will get deported. We're tired of deportations, we're tired of 287G, we're tired of militarization of the borders, and we're making a stand and hoping our people stand up, and they're tired of this. Give people some hope.
In 2007, the Sheriff's Department began targeting day laborers for immigration arrests through raids and traffic stops. Right-wing extremists further harassed these workers while the sheriff cheered their efforts. In response, community members began to become more active in standing up against this intimidation.
Hey, Sal! What's happening, Sal? What's happening, boy? Fake Indian. Fake Indian. Fake Indian. Ooh, you stink. Don't you take a shower?
What happened? You cannot keep quiet anymore?
When you do work for the community, it's honored. Over here, work has been criminalized. And instead of honoring them, they try to criminalize them and persecute them. So we call ourselves Masewali to remind ourselves that without us, this city would not be as beautiful, the lawns would not be cut, the city hall would not be built. Masewali means those who deserve praise for their sacrifice, and this is what the center is all about, creating dignity for our people.
Arpaio says he now has 160 trained deputies and officers working to enforce the law. Some believe the sheriff's latest crackdown on illegal immigration is going to be quite controversial. That's because it includes a new hotline for Valley residents to report illegal immigrants.
We will arrest them if we find out they are illegal.
This controversy thrust Arpaio into the national spotlight on immigration issues. Some people living in the area began to ask questions about the motives behind this attention and the damage left in its wake.
Basically, every part of this police agency was being retooled into an anti-illegal immigration enforcement effort. They made available more than 5,000 pages of unredacted immigration criminal arrest reports. And so Paul Giblin and I spent the better part of 2 weeks, 8 or 9 or more hours a day in a conference room in the sheriff's office, going through every single page of those arrest reports and pulling data from it. We were able to find out that 30% of the probable causes for traffic stops were related to license plate issues. And when you talk to pretty much any law enforcement expert, they tell you that that's highly dubious.
Sheriff Joe saw the writing on the wall and he started going after people. So when he got out the 287G agreements, which are agreements between local police and ICE, they trained local police officers to question and actually make them de facto federal agents.
The 287G program allows Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to train local police and use local jails to screen and detain apprehended immigrants. It's used in 23 states, predominantly in the southwest and southern region of the United States, and in Arizona, where some of the harshest immigration laws exist.
At the same time as the sheriff's office was ramping up these massive crackdowns on day laborers, they basically ran out of money. In early 2007, the sheriff's office was able to formalize its partnership with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In one 2-week period, they spent over $400,000 on overtime for their police agency. That's nearly half their entire annual budget they spent in 2 weeks. We started going to the contract cities that they serve and pulling records from there, and just contacting people in the law enforcement community saying, what are you hearing about the sheriff's office performance in its core communities? In the course of those interviews, we got a tip that there were problems in the town of El Mirage. The tip we got was the sheriff's office had not investigated certain cases that definitely should have been investigated. At bare minimum, 30 violent crime cases, a dozen of those sex assaults, confirmed as sex assaults, were not investigated, were opened and closed without any measure of investigation being done. Some of the cases were really, truly egregious. There was a 15-year-old girl who was raped in a ditch, reported it promptly. She was taken to a hospital and they administered a rape kit that showed there had definitely been sex assault. The case was closed just a few days later without the sheriff's office doing anything. Once immigration enforcement had began, all of a sudden, the number of those cases that were being closed by exception, particularly sex assaults, just rocketed. It roughly doubled.
Affluent suburbs and retirement communities have little interaction with Maricopa County Sheriff deputies. Arpaio's large base of political support comes from these communities, and they are usually ignored during crime sweeps. The sheriff focuses enforcement on the smaller areas where Latino and indigenous communities reside. The town of Guadalupe is one of those places.
Irreparable damage has been done between the relationship of the community and the sheriff. In Guadalupe, the type of American Indians that live here are Yaqui Americans. Yaquis are from the United States and as well as from Mexico. They're reservations and they go under federal land. This is the town of Guadalupe, which is just like any other old town. Same council and same setup with municipalities, ordinances and zoning, same thing. Phoenix is actually just right there, just right at the mall, where the mall's at, so it's like walking distance. Actually, we go to Denny's. If we go to Denny's, we're in Phoenix. There's a coexistence. There is no issue between immigrants, and if there is, the community tends to address it right there on the spot. Guadalupe brings people from Mexico for some of the ceremonies. So we have real deep roots to Mexico. For the most part, I think that any immigrant that's here is probably here with a family member that's a legal American citizen or a legal American Indian that has just family that is south of the border. Cuidado, viene Arpaio. Be careful, Arpaio's coming. Just be careful because this guy comes out and who knows who's gonna get hurt, who knows who's gonna get, profiled to be a criminal or an illegal immigrant. The town itself pays $1.3 million to the sheriff of a $3 million budget. So about 1/3 of the budget goes to the sheriff. Unless it got so bad that you couldn't do anything else but call the deputies, and you would call them. But I think a bunch of community members had just said, they just gave up on the sheriffs, handle it themselves. It took them 45 minutes to respond to a robbery, silent alarm trip from this building right here. The deputies are actually stationed less than a quarter of a mile away from here.
The human rights violations are on the increase because once they get into jail, the job of the 287G trained officers is basically to get them to sign their voluntary departure or their deportation. These guys, when they refuse, they're intimidated. There was this lady that her arm was broken when she tried to do that.
¿Y usted en algún momento se opuso resistencia, más de que no quería firmar?
Yo quería poner resistencia nada más por no poner la huella, pero de otra forma no.
Another lady, her jaw was dislocated when she was caught in one of the workplace raids that Sheriff Arpaio does.
Fui arrestada un 11 de febrero del 2009.
I was arrested February 11th, 2009.
Donde sufrí abuso físico.
Where I was physically abused.
Estuve 3 meses en la cárcel con mi quijada dislocada.
I was 3 months in jail with a dislocated jaw.
Después de haber sido aventada sobre la pared por el sheriff.
After I was thrown against a wall by the sheriff's personnel.
Durante mi estancia allí.
During my stay there.
Me insultaron de lo más feo.
They insulted me in the worst way.
Ellos me decían bitch.
They called me a bitch.
Doggy.
A dog.
I'm sorry. Fui degradada de muchas maneras.
I was degraded in many ways.
Abuses in the streets and in the jails increase. In response, people take to the streets and march to the county jails in protest.
I have a letter here which I wish to read to you. It's an anonymous letter, and it was sent by a collection of women now being detained and abused here in Estrella, to whom it may concern. We attest that we are a group of desperate and frustrated women that are asking for someone to help us. We find ourselves detained in the Estrella prison of Maricopa County. There are lots of women that are unjustly being accused for crimes that we have not committed. We are treated like the worst delinquents, the worst criminals, only because we are Hispanic or undocumented.
Well, the Department of Justice, at least twice in the past, once in '96 and once in '99, came into this county, looked at our jail conditions, and told the sheriff and the county board of supervisors, you're conducting unconstitutionally unsafe and dangerous jails. You've got to fix it. These conditions are inhumane and cruel. Each time after signing an agreement to clean up those conditions, he's completely ignored the promises he made in '96 and '99. 2 nurses from the MCSO's medical office are in that dorm and could have been asked to at least take a look at Deborah. Their own medical records show she was diabetic.
I didn't know that she was in there until a couple days after a friend of hers called me. So I attempted to call the medical examiner's office and inform them, but they don't give you information. He took the information that I had from me and said that they would do something about it. And, you know, because of my concern, I did ask, well, can somebody call me back? And, you know, is there a way for me to know what's going on? And they said, no, you know, we can't take messages or relay messages or any of that type of things. So I just had to hope and pray and put it in God's hands that she would be taken care of. People inside those jails are being treated far worse than you could imagine. She got very ill and they ignored her cries for help, and they let her lay in her own vomit and feces and just ignored her. And and she finally slipped into a coma. For my mom to lay for 72 hours suffering, and I can't even imagine the pain that she went through. And for them to just walk around like it was no big deal, or more or less move her to a TV room where people couldn't hear her crying for help. It's just beyond me.
I wrote Attorney General Holder because we have discovered the department has destroyed evidence or created evidence. Sometimes we've had that actually admitted on a witness stand. That's actually from the Braillard case. They took a very clear digital image and they looped it on a VHS machine until that digital image was hard to watch, and it looked like you were watching the images of Deborah Braillard through a Chicago snowstorm in February. The Maricopa County taxpayers, over the time Joe Arpaio has been sheriff, have paid over $43 million in settlements and judgments for people who've either been killed or injured unnecessarily in those jails. And frankly, one of the tragedies is that's just a fraction of the people who have actually died or been injured. He was sick. He fell asleep. When the detention officers screamed at him to move, he was so sick, tired, and passed out he didn't hear it and didn't respond, and that pissed him off. And that was a death sentence for Scott Norberg. Once they got him on the ground and they stunned him 19 times, then someone took their boot, kicked him in the throat so hard it broke his larynx. During that process, they also put a towel over his face, and a detention officer was standing behind him, tightening the towel over his face, while 9 other detention officers pushed Scott forward. They continued to push him forward, and he died of positional asphyxia. None of them were ever disciplined. All of them received promotions. They took a man, a 125-pound man, who was retarded. He had the mentality of a 12 to 14-year-old boy. They took that man, put him in a restraint chair, and then 10 of them did the same thing. This time, though, one of the MCSO nurses came to check Mr. Agster out to see if he was doing okay. She checks him out and says he's faking it. This retarded man is faking his own death. They get him no help. He dies in that chair. Many of those people that die there don't have family in the valley. They just simply ship them off, and they're buried, and it's never recorded and never reported. One of the most recent deaths occurred with a man whose family was in Mexico. And it wasn't until some energetic reporter found that person's relatives in Mexico and said, hey, your father has been killed in the Maricopa County jails. These are people who have not been convicted on the crime for which they were arrested. I mean, how could anybody truly be surprised that we have so many deaths, so many injuries in this jail system when the man at the top says, I want you to punish people in my jails. Make them as bad as you can make them.
In the aftermath of Sheriff Arpaio's controversies and abuse, a surge of activism emerged in the community to fight the injustice. Many people came together to form a group called the Puente Movement. Marches in communities were organized to call attention to the plight of residents in Maricopa County.
call it Puente. Puente means bridge. It's a movement that came out of necessity, out of need, out of just protection, because Sheriff Arpaio just controls everything. We hope that we can lay the infrastructure in the community so that in the long-term process for the future generations, so that we don't have to put up with what's happening today.
This is a non-violent struggle. I mean, there's enough harm, there's enough suffering. I mean, violence only brings more suffering. And even if Arpaio, we don't want, whether he makes his decisions to be the way he is and causes all this harm. If something happened to him, it wouldn't only be him who suffers, but it'd be his grandchildren and his family. So we don't want that. It's non-violence. We're out here to send a message that's how change can happen.
The reason we did those marches is because Sheriff Joe is out of control, and we had to start bringing attention to what's going on. We had been asking for investigations by the Justice Department.
Sheriff Joe Arpaio under the microscope this morning. The U.S. Justice Department now looking into allegations of discrimination and unconstitutional searches and seizures by his department.
What we're trying to get here is to send out a real clear message to Washington, D.C. Get Sheriff Arpaio out of law enforcement until the whole investigation finishes, so that the abuses that are happening right now don't continue to happen. There's abuses in jail, there's abuses in the street, there's abuses all over the place. This cannot happen in a society that calls itself democratic.
I happened to move into somewhere where not only people that were undocumented were being oppressed, but I even felt oppressed myself for being, Mexican, a Mexican American, a Chicana. So I was just like, what can I do? I went to a protest, and Sal just told me, he's just kind of like, listen, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a college student. We're looking for someone who can just help us out, help organize the students. And he's like, you seem to bring a lot of people with you when you protest. He's like, you seem to really rally up, a group of students and bring them to an action. So would you be interested with working with us? We're going to start a campaign against Arpaio. And I was like, yes. And at the moment I was working at a photo lab, which I felt like I wasn't doing anything. So I was like, yes, let's do it. I spoke to the lady from the Zapatista Coalition, and I spoke to Pablo. But Pablo said they didn't need housing. They were just coming in and out. And then the girl from the Zapatista Coalition said that there was 30 coming in, and I've already housed those 30. My mom had saved a lot of money. She is a single mother. She raised 4 of us. And she always had her dream of giving us a house, because we grew up, it was 5 of us in a 1-bedroom house. I was looking into ASU, so we had a couple family members here. And she just took the leap and purchased a 5-bedroom house. When we were signing the paperwork to move here, we went to the bathroom, and there was already tagging all over the bathroom saying, Mexicans go home. I would tell my mom, why did we move here? This is just a mistake, let's go back. If we go back to Los Angeles, everything will be okay. We'll all move on, we'll have better lives over there. Let's just get out of here. But my mom, she really liked Arizona. She really loves Arizona. And I was just like, you know what? I would think to myself before going to bed, I would be like, something has to change.
Arpaio! 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 I say 287G, you say no. 287G! No! 287G! No! 287G! No! 287G! No! 287G! No!
I think his priorities, Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, their priorities are totally off. He should be going after felons and not after activists and migrants. What affects the migrants affects the Chicanos, And that's why it was so important for me, because what was affecting them was affecting my family, and it was affecting me in the ways that if they were gonna be profiled, I was gonna be profiled because of my skin color, my accent, my language, and the way I dress. So we're pretty much intertwined. In February of 2009, Sheriff Joe decided to make an immigrant tent city with a barbed wire, electrical fence so people wouldn't jump it. He did a press conference and a press release saying that he was going to march 200 undocumented migrants into the new immigrant tent city.
Right when I started to record, one of the detention officers turned around and asked me what I was doing there, and I told him I was recording. They arrested me for criminal trespassing. They never read me my rights. They're real short with me. They just booked me, put me in the system. I had to wait like a good 14 hours to get out.
All right, I'll be there in like 15, 20. Okay. Bring something to read? All right. I was arrested in February 2009, and then to go, I think, 6 to 9 months of monthly court dates, to be dismissed, and to think that my court case was won, and then for them to appeal it, to go back to court, and now I'm gonna go to trial for trespassing is a waste of taxpayer dollars and just unjust. In my actual police report, they put that they had seen me at other protests, so that's why they wanted to arrest me. So it's definitely that I was an activist, that they arrested me that day, and it's definitely that they're going after me with the appeal because I'm an activist. It's real sad that one person can totally destroy the community that we once had, and that he's making himself famous by driving that wedge. It's very important that we seek to unite. We can't let this one person or federal programs like 287G and secure communities divide us.
There's no accountability to the sheriff when he patrols this community.
Arpaio has to go! Arpaio has to go! Arpaio has to go!
It looked like some kind of a explosion happened because there was deputies everywhere. It just looked like, you know, America's Most Wanted escaped in the town of Guadalupe, and everybody was a suspect. The news started circulating around the town. People came out in numbers. A sheriff felt that. He felt that pressure. You know, we had some instances where they were asked for identification because they were walking from one point to the next. And they showed them their tribal identification card and said that's not a valid ID. When we got closer to where the sheriff had his suppression point, where it says family dollar, I just blew my horn. Like, I guess after this sign 25 miles an hour, I blew my horn right here, boop, and there was a deputy coming up, and he got right behind me. He kept driving, and then my sister's like, there's a cop behind me, and it's like, I know, it's just, if he pulls us over, well, there's not much you can say, and like right here, the lights go on. Deputies were all back here. 10, 15 minutes, and then they came back and says, get off the car. I got off my car, I went behind my car where they wanted to talk to me, and they said, do you know it is against the law to be blowing your horn? And I says, okay. I didn't want to really answer them. They asked me again, and he leans a little forward, and the other officer crosses his arms and kind of has that like mean look, and then he says, do you know it is against the law to be blowing your horn? I says, yeah, okay. And then finally, he could tell he's ticked, and he leans a little forward, a little over me, and then says, do you know it is against the law to be blowing your horn? I says, okay, whatever. Finally, I say whatever, and finally he's like, it's weird, he just like looked like he was so tense, and then he just like, whew, pulls out the ticket and says, okay, you're gonna have to sign this. I'm giving you a ticket for excessive use of horn. I looked at the ticket like, oh my God. To top it off, it was an immigration custom enforcement, specially trained deputy, that detective, that gave me this ticket.
The sheriff's crime suppression sweeps create more notoriety for Arpaio. The sweeps attract vast media attention and shut down neighborhoods as deputies swarm target areas. The sheriff's posse of volunteers are used to help make arrests, and incidents of racial profiling increase, as do the lawsuits. But despite the growing tension, Arpaio remains committed to his tactics.
We go and we have camera crews that follow them around.
Sir, you can't film here.
And what is the reason for that?
One of the ones that sticks to my mind is when we arrived to the scene, a posse member came and told me I couldn't film under any circumstances. So I put the camera on the side and I kept it rolling. And what was happening is two little kids stuck their head out of the mom's car while the mom was on the sheriff's car right across from them. And they were crying.
¿Y qué te decía el policía?
Nada, que me callaba, pero no podía porque quería mi mami.
Que te callara, te decía, si te dio un juguete. ¿Te dio ese juguete el policía? ¿Y a ti qué te dio?
Es su monito de color.
They were terrified, they were trembling, the kids were trembling from fear.
Sí, me dijo el policía que iba para mí.
These two little kids were taken away from their mom in exchange for a toy. The treatment that he gives to the Anglos when they get stopped is totally different. We have a video of two stops within like a 1 block area. One stop, they were joking, nice about it, they were kicking back. The other one, the Mexicano, he was on handcuffs on the side of the curb, even though he had his wife and his little child with him.
Why is he gonna bring dogs when we just got pulled over just for a tail light?
Right here in Maricopa County, people that perceived to be Mexicanos have been persecuted and humiliated.
When they came in, they grabbed my brother like that from the neck, they threw him in the floor and hit him.
They deleted this guy's film.
Yeah, so they didn't want me filming that, and I just, it's my right. It's my right to film it.
Absolutely.
Listen, you're talking. If I take that, you'll get it back in the investigation.
Okay, so when I talk, I can't talk. I can only listen to you.
That's exactly the way it works. You can call your lawyer, call whoever you want. Doesn't really matter. Okay? I'll give you a receipt for it.
Call sign second, please, and go ahead. See, really, essentially what these sweeps are is an opportunity for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department to go brown hunting. And that's really what they do. They terrorize neighborhoods like this that are obviously heavily Hispanic neighborhoods with a lot of Mexican and indigenous people, like Guadalupe, like, just the areas.
One of Arpaio's roundups of our people has been just intimidating the community like he usually does in the name of crime suppression.
They were coming from Chuck E. Cheese.
Yes.
So what do you think of Arpaio doing all of this stuff?
Sucks. We all have a valid driver's license.
And they would not let you go?
But nobody
let you guys drive the vehicle?
No.
Why couldn't
Even though you have little kids?
Yeah, we have a baby.
It's debatable whether the Sheriff's Office deputies, even those trained by ICE, qualify as experienced immigration agents. So the Sheriff's Office has always clung to, we have legitimate probable cause based on traffic violations to make a stop. That's what makes our stops legal. And I had done a ride-along with the human smuggling unit in early January of '08. The detective that I was riding along with spotted a blue van that he felt quite certain had illegal immigrants inside. He sped up right and just got what felt like a few millimeters away from their rear end and was swerving around, driving erratically, very fast. But that van wasn't moving. Ultimately, turned on his brights and swerved into the left-hand lane, and then swerved back, and he cast his high beams on the back of the vehicle. And you could just see immediately just this whole cascade of human shadows. Every corner of that van was filled with people. And he immediately switched on his emergency lights to pull over the vehicle. And he said, "Failure to signal," and turned to me and said, "You saw that." And they hadn't switched lanes. Later that night, as they were processing back at the station all the immigrants they'd arrested, the superior of the detective I was with was calling in the basic details of the night's operations, and the question had come: what was the probable cause for the stop? And so the sergeant shouted to the detective, "What was your PC on that?" And the Detective Cosme stopped and sort of squinted and looked up at the ceiling and tried to remember what it was. And the sergeant joked into the phone that, "Hold on for a second. He's trying to figure out what to make up." And with me sitting there writing down every word they were saying, it was they were pretty relaxed, and he was joking. He was joking, but ultimately, I didn't see the probable cause that they cited.
It just comes to show like that they're looking to deport, and that's all it is. That's all that these crime suppression sweeps are. They're just excuses to get brown folks and deport them. Obviously, they're asking, are they deportable or not over the radio? That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for criminals. They're looking for people to take out of the United States. So, well, right now we're just listening in for the calls, and so whenever we hear the codes, I have everybody, we send them a text, and then they go and they get on the cars and they patrol.
35th Avenue and Broadway.
35th Avenue and Broadway.
We have a command post and we have people working with the scanners. They're telling us where to go, where someone's being stopped. We're following an unmarked car. It pulled somebody over close to a church. You know why? He's doing a crime suppression sweep.
Yeah,
So
we
he's
kind of figured.
She was the fifth person we've seen being taken away.
He wants to separate families, and just think about maybe the kids that she has to go home to, or was trying to go home to.
Yeah, she just got off of work.
It's the women who are the ones who are being shackled to the jails. It's the women who are being targeted at work, especially if you're an undocumented woman, because you're vulnerable to anybody. You know, somebody can come into your house and rob you, and there's nothing you can do. You couldn't call the police. You can be raped on the street, and there's nothing you can do. You can't call the police. And so if I were an undocumented woman, I would seriously be afraid, because I think women are definitely a target right now. It's just a big part of my life that, you know, what we do as a community, we get together and we meet and talk, and, you know, they're also, my community members are like a second family.
Well, now we start coming more and together and strong, because after they know they have a lot of needs in the community.
We're going to start that this upcoming week. We'll train you, we'll give you the curriculum, we'll give you all the information.
We have a free attorneys and teach their rights, English class, and help each other. And like we met once a week, and we talk all the time about the problem. And then we let these people know that only not Arizona being targeted with Arpaio, with immigration, also the all United States. Phoenix is a nice place to live, you know, it's hot. But with Arpaio and the police working together is kind of nasty. There are people that are afraid to call the cops, and, you know, they increase the crime because people that are afraid to call the police. And the community, they don't work with the police anymore. When Arpaio arrests a mothers, a parents, they feel angry with him. Arpaio, he came to Manzanita talking about safety in the community, talking about, you know, how community can work together. But we know that was not the truth. My sister, she went inside and she heard when Arpaio, he was saying, you know, you have the right, here's the number, so you have the right to call, you know, at your neighborhood. If you seeing a lot of people walk in, walk out, that means there's something wrong with these people. So, you know, like Latinos, we have a big family. So people, you know, all the time they can come in and out, and so they don't mean we're selling drugs or we're smuggling. And so, and I think Arpaio, that's the idea he wants to bring to their community. Y nos estaban diciendo allá las cosas como están, que por culpa de los directores y los maestros están dejando entrar a migración a los parqueaderos. Entonces ahorita dejaron entrar a Arpaio. So, si pasa migración, lo van a venir a, lo van a dejar entrar. Arpaio being in school, that was not any good idea, because he's gonna do the same thing like the INS, the police have been doing for a long time, separating families, separating communities.
Right here in Maricopa County, the criminalization for the future, it's already here, and basically taking examples of what is happening, what's going on. Sheriff Joe just yesterday arrested about something like 76 people. He basically took it upon himself, unless they're supporting him, but they're not doing anything about it.
Several months earlier, the Department of Homeland Security dissolved the 287G agreement with Arpaio to make immigration arrests. But the sheriff continued to enforce immigration laws without any repercussions. Puente organizes a protest at the Justice Department to demand action be taken against Arpaio.
Department of Justice, the Office of Eric Holder. We've asked to speak with them. They've denied us a meeting. So we decided to have a press conference and a demonstration to tell them to do something about Arpaio. We've turned in an ample amount of evidence. So we're here to push them, to encourage them, to tell them that we mean business.
Joe Arpaio has to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Joe Arpaio has to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Joe Arpaio has to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Joe Arpaio has to go.
The Justice Department has been investigating for 20 months, and they still don't have enough. Hundreds of testimonies, complaints, and all they can tell us is we have to investigate some more. Whether they want to listen to us privately or publicly, we will still have our say about what's going on in Maricopa County. And there is blood on the hands of the Justice Department every day that they don't stop Sheriff Joe.
If your human rights are under attack, what do you do? If your human rights are under attack, what do you do?
We know that the abuse has been tremendous. We possibly will pay out close to $100 million in lawsuits over the next 3 years because of these abuses. And I could not sit still and have my community just be treated in a disrespectful manner, human rights, civil rights being violated. So I spoke out from the very beginning. They subpoenaed me and they served me with a warrant. I believe he did not arrest me because the community would have gone crazy, and he knew it. But he made my life hell. When we did discovery with my attorney, there was a table about 8 foot long that had books and books of things that he had done investigation on me. We found out he had come into my restaurant, he had sent people wired to try to get me to admit I don't know what. He has put together a squad called the Mace Squad, and he uses them to investigate. He not only indicted me, he indicted a fellow supervisor whose charges all got thrown out. He indicted a judge, a sitting judge, based on the fact that he said the judge was committing conspiracy. He also took to court all of my colleagues, all 5 of us, to federal court saying that we were committing conspiracy. It was crazy. The case got thrown out of federal court.
His pushing of policies and politics is usually to serve a particular end that benefits his office. It's usually to get money for the sheriff's office. I mean, much of the transformation they undertook and the partnership that they put together with the federal government was to get access to millions and millions of dollars. Now, that didn't ultimately work out for them, but the intention was a cash grab.
The sheriff has taken detention monies, people who are supposed to be working in the jails, taken those funds and use them in his sweeps to hire deputies or to pay deputies who are assisting him in those sweeps, in the investigation of all of us. So he has misused those funds. He has abused his fiduciary responsibility as an elected official. He's abused human and civil rights responsibilities to the electorate. So I think he needs to go.
This legislation has been subject of vigorous debate and intense criticism. My decision to sign it was by no means made lightly. I've decided to sign Senate Bill 1070 into law because, though many people disagree, I firmly believe it represents what's best for Arizona.
We'll wait and see. But I'm telling everybody right now, July 29th, that's when I'm going to start enforcing that law. Like we'll put tents up from here to Mexico.
SB 1070 required that all law enforcement agencies in Arizona enforce immigration laws in the same way as Sheriff Arpaio. A tipping point had been reached, and all over Arizona, people would escalate their resistance.
This is a racist bill, and no one is taking the time
with anybody to see who it is affecting. As students, as the future, we are here. We change ourselves up, and we are starting the movement. We are starting the wave for non-violent civil disobedience, and this will continue.
This is non-violent civil disobedience. Massive call out for all communities of Arizona and all over the country for massive civil disobedience.
No justice, no peace. No racist police. No justice, no peace. No racist police. Hey, ho, ho. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. SB 1070's got to go.
Different family members from different parts of the human family uniting against SB 1070 says a lot. Brings hope that not everybody's biased, not everybody's a racist, not everybody's a bigot, and there's hope because there's a lot of love here in Arizona, and there's a lot of love that came from outside of Arizona. So it's very beautiful to see the human family together.
Arpaio's reign needs to end.
Thank you, Alan. Sorry.
What the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office did with regard to some of these arrests today is hard to understand. We'll find out if it can't even be condoned. There were 3 attorneys arrested who were there as legal observers. People with cameras were arrested who were not part of the demonstration. And why that happened is interesting. A photographer for the Arizona Republic was taken into custody, and he, of course, had a camera. Very odd.
Last night we arrested 3 illegal aliens. 3. But we arrested them because they didn't have a driver's license. We didn't just stop them because they looked like they came from another country. We don't do that.
It is now 4:07 p.m. You have until 4:10 p.m. to vacate the area. If you do not vacate the area, you'll be arrested for disorderly conduct and interrupting the orderly operation of a governmental operation.
We're outside Sheriff Arpaio's jail. We're stopping a raid.
I gave them a chance. They don't want to take it. They want to go to jail. Now, yesterday was easy. I didn't have to waste any gas because we just took them behind the door. Now we got to waste gas and bring them downtown.
Do you know yet what that arrest was for? I didn't happen to see it.
Not complying with the judge's order when he was released
terms
yesterday,
of release,
right?
yeah, terms of release.
He violated that.
What were the terms that he violated?
Not to be involved in this anymore.
Yeah, we don't have them officially, but apparently this type of activity, right?
We're trying to find out what the basis was for that.
They just told me for not complying with the judge's order, apparently violating terms of his release.
And what specifically are they referring to?
I haven't said yet.
Okay. They have to be specific. So when we get to court, we'll see what they invent.
The grabs of a gun. Arrest implies that there was some kind of legality involved. That was not an arrest. That was an abduction. It's an abduction. And these laws that are called immigration laws and policies that are called immigration policies, these are not immigration laws and policies. These are laws and policies of persecution.
Have a charge that was given as to Salvador was taken by a bunch of deputies by his car. After a while, there was a lot of people, and I don't know if people cop watching. So it was called off pretty early, I think about 10 o'clock, because the sheriff's deputies weren't really getting a lot of people. And so they said that, they basically called it off. So, the effect of those 10 people blocking that area did have an effect because, it still got in the way of their normal raiding activity.
Mr. Reza?
Your Honor, Mr. Reza is a longtime resident of Arizona. He's very active in the community. There are serious disputes with regard to circumstances surrounding his arrest.
I'm just not finding probable cause for what he was arrested for today. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
What we're suffering here right now, it's not happening only here in Maricopa County. It's happening anywhere that there's migration of peoples. We're all brothers, and I hope we can start laying the foundation for that in the future.